Okay, and once again, we're back talking about the Tangled TV show. What can I say? It's an absolute banger of a show. Loved it. Wish there was more to watch. Seriously. Does feel like you could easily pick it back up and just make more, but it is what it is. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun watching it. But that being said, that doesn't mean I don't think it has its issues. And we've been through a few of them at length on this channel. We talked about Cass and her fall into villainy, which started off interesting and then became forced and drawn out. And honestly just kind of weird with everybody thinking to themselves, oh yeah, she tried to kill us all and only stopped when she got screwed over, but she's really sorry, sad face. Ooh. We discussed Varian and how his arc was squandered at times, and honestly how he got done a bit dirty by the writing, and how that in turn did kind of all the characters dirty in a way, and made it feel like they didn't care one bit about him during season 1. And most recently we talked about Rapunzel as a character, as there's been a lot of discussion since the show first aired about how she's a toxic character in the context of the show, with a lot of people hating on her in the comments, and many of them using this to justify or explain why Cass did what she did. And that was certainly a spicy topic. Didn't realize how many people seem to despise Rapunzel as a result of the writing on the show. Hell, I saw one bold commenter say that she should have done more to help Gothel in the movie. What? I mean, don't Eugene and Pascal literally team up to murder her? What was Rapunzel supposed to do? Anyway, I don't really want to get too far bogged down in those previous topics. We've been there, we've done that. And so today I want to go in a fresh direction because as I was thinking about how in my eyes, the likes of characters like Varian were done dirty by the writing, at the same time I could rationalize that. He's a side character for the most part, it's no big deal in the end. But there is one character that I think for the most part, or rather in a lot of ways, was done even dirtier over a longer period of time, and that character in my eyes is Eugene. Bro, what happened? His treatment from film to show is at times night and day. It's often sad to see. Seriously, at one point, he was my definitive Disney dude. And yeah, he's since been dethroned by David from Lilo and Stitch, who is just a relentless Chad. But I still have a lot of nostalgia and love for Eugene. And in the film itself, he's written so well, to the point that I think that when you think Disney Prince, for a lot of people, this is the face that's going to come to mind. He starts off the film as completely and utterly selfish and immoral. The dude steals the crown of the missing Princess Rapunzel, which is just off. And then he betrays his comrades, and as the show goes on to show us, they were his childhood companions and accomplices. He leaves them to be arrested and potentially executed. I mean, they were probably going to get hanged, right? Remember, I'm pretty sure he was going to be hanged for the crime when he gets arrested later on in the movie. And honestly, I'd forgotten about that. Like, why is it that Eugene's going to get hanged for theft, but Varian and Cass, who attempted coups, just get a year in jail and no consequences, respectively? Hell, there are a bunch of heinous folk that do not face the consequences you'd expect, really. It's one of those funny differences that you see from the show into the film. The film, whilst being happy and lighthearted, is perhaps also a bit darker and more grounded. But the show, it leans heavily into fantastical whimsy. Not really a complaint or anything like that, I find it amusing. Poor Eugene was going to swing! And I also love that they just never reference or address it ever again. Classic Captain of the Guards, that rascal. But yeah, he's not a very good person at the time, at least on the surface. But beneath the treachery and selfishness, and the snark and the sarcasm, over the course of the film, through his interactions with Rapunzel and their journey together, it's revealed that he's in fact a very kind and a sensitive person. One who's very much an active hero within the story, coming in clutch to help save the day with the help of his friends, breaking out of prison, avoiding his execution, and then arriving to try to free Rapunzel. I mean, yeah, he fails and ends up getting stabbed, but he does have that Chad last moment where he cuts Rapunzel's hair to prevent Gothel from being able to take her, as now she has no way to channel the power of the sun drop. And then he dies, and she revives him through her tears, and it's all happily ever after. He accepts being Eugene rather than Flynn Rider, and they get engaged and he's very quickly adopted into her new family. All's well that ends well. An excellent ending for a very well-written character. And really just a great arc that's well treated by the narrative. You love to see it. But at the same time, I can't help but feel that when it came time for the show to debut, instead of the charming, wisecracking rogue with a lot of plot importance and involvement in key moments, Eugene got shuffled off to the side somewhat, turned into a punching bag, and for me in a lot of ways just didn't have the same vibe or narrative importance. Felt like he was being treated as a bit of a dickhead at times. Too much of a joke to take seriously, and I suppose I better explain what I mean by all that. Look, I mean, we've gone over what Eugene was like in the film. He had an arc. He was selfish and self-centered, and in ways immature, and over the course of the film he grew up significantly. He changed, and yet when we return to him in the show, and this is present throughout the entirety of the show's run, but is especially prevalent to me during season 1, where the plot was far less interconnected and was more a collection of adventures, a day in the life of Corona. The dude was annoying, always whining, always jabbering on. And whilst that's part of his character in the film as well, there it comes across as charisma and dry wit, but here it's petulant, like they devolved his character to make him more immature than he was previously. Seriously. The theme of the season for the majority of the episode seems to be Rapunzel has a problem, Eugene doesn't listen, brushes her off, spends time picking fights with Cass, he bumbles around, and occasionally he gets to be the hero or gets a slight romance moment, but rarely. I mean, sometimes he does get those fun moments where he's a bit more serious and dry, the Eugene that existed in the film, but more and more they amp up the goofy. And I think this is something that improves the further you go throughout the show, but in season 1 especially, it is rough. And his bickering with Cass, it gets so old so quickly. Yes, there are bright spots where the goofiness meets his older, more roguish persona, particularly when you meet Lance, who's so goofy that the writing had no choice but to position Eugene as the straight guy. But even then, it's not a 100% guarantee. But at the very least, in the early season, he still felt important to the story, even if he was a massive doofus 99% of the time. And whilst there are episodes that heavily focus on him at times during season 2, his status as the second lead, it's shuffled. It's Cass now. And, like, I get it, they were building to that big betrayal and the split storyline, but his lack of narrative importance at times was grating in that regard. A lot of times it just felt like he was one of the gang, or a damsel to be saved, or 1/3 of Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest with Lance and Hookfoot. I forgot Hookfoot existed. I wonder why they never brought him back in season 3. Was he, like, not popular or something? Oh well. Also, that whole storyline where he wants to get married and keeps getting rejected, looking like an overeager fool that simply can't take a hint at all. Eugene, look how they massacred my boy. Conversely, I feel like his involvement in the story really did ramp up during the 3rd season again, as now with Cass gone, Rapunzel needed somebody to play off, and he had that storyline with his dad, which was nice, but even then, it feels at times he's just there to be the point of view character, but not to actually do anything. He gets slapped around with everybody by Cass to build Rapunzel's storyline, and remember that time in the climax of his story with his dad, where it's revealed that his dad's mind-controlled. Does Eugene have this great moment where he talks his dad down, or where he defeats them all and looks like a Chad? No, he gets his ass beat, he's saved by Max, then he gets stomped again, and his dad breaks free on his own. And really that just feels like Eugene's role in the show. It encapsulates him completely. He's a punching bag and a bit of a joke, whilst maintaining the illusion of being really important. But another thing that I actually noticed is that Eugene's relationship with Rapunzel really takes a massive backseat at times throughout the course of the show's run. And like, yes, I'm sure you could hand me episodes that show that's not the case. But I'm talking general terms. In the film, their dynamic, their bond, their developing romance, it's the clear main story thread you follow throughout the film. And yet in my eyes, the importance of this bond is heavily diluted across the course of the show. In every season, it feels like Rapunzel and her storyline with Cass is the one that takes precedence in the eyes of the writing over anything else time and time again. And I get it, this is by design of the show. In season 1, you've just met Cass, she's an original character, and since she wasn't in the original film, you need to dedicate time to her, quality time, by fleshing out her character and her dynamic with Rapunzel, who's the show's main character. I get it. Then in season 2, you got to spend a lot of time building up to Cass betraying the group. You got to show the fracturing of the bond between her and Rapunzel over time, that whole business at the Great Tree, and then Cass snatching the Moonstone and getting hit hard with the villain bat. And then of course there's the 3rd season where it feels like every 5 minutes, Rapunzel's lamenting about Cass and how she wishes that they were still best buds and that she can be saved. And look, I get it, the Cass-Rapunzel dynamic is very important to how the show was structured narratively. But at the same time, it feels like Eugene gets the short end of the stick again and again and again. Yes, there are episodes that delve into their relationship and their romance, but it feels very surface level, a very bare basics type of thing. It's not at the level you'd be expecting after a movie in 3 seasons, you get me? And look, I somewhat get it. They wanted the heavy Cass focus, but why didn't they delve into her relationship and her antagonistic dynamic with Eugene? At best, these two characters seem to tolerate each other for Rapunzel's sake. Why not explore why they don't like each other, properly, deeply? But it just never happens. Hell, in the end, Eugene is the reason that Gothel is dead. Did they ever really address that? I know Pascal murdered her in the end, but she was going to die anyway. She was going to disintegrate because Eugene cut the hair. But in the end, a lot of episodes just end up rehashing the same old issues with Rapunzel and Cass, but in fresh contexts. And when they do dive into things like Rapunzel and Eugene, it very much feels like Rapunzel's in the driver's seat. They show her perspectives the most, her thoughts on it, her point of view. And he gets left in the dust, which, I don't know, it's a bit of a shame. Because there's a lot of episodes of this show. There was room for him to be treated as an equal lead the entire time. A trinity of leads, but they just don't. And it's sad to see as a big fan of the character, because you get left with this feeling of him being massively squandered. But yeah, beyond that, not much else to say. And so I will just remind you that these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of Eugene and his fall from prominence in the Tangled show? Was he wasted? Maybe you disagree and I'm talking out my ass. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.